Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Yext event, Unlock the Black Box of AI Discovery with Yext Scout. Before I pass it over to Rebecca, though, we have something that we're all really interested in hearing. It's a fun little poll. So we're going to play a game. I'm going to bring the poll on screen. The poll is, let me open it and share. How often do you use AI platforms to search? Let's see what everyone's thinking here. We have every day, I don't search without it. Depends what I'm searching for. Gross, never, you never use AI. I would love to see the result here. All right, Rebecca, it's bouncing back and forth right now so far. Depends on what I'm searching for every day. Not a lot of people say gross never, but that's interesting to see.
Yeah, really interesting.
Rebecca, I'm going to close it, but it looks like depends what I'm searching for is the answer, which I think ties in nicely to what you're about to be going into as well. So I'm going to stop sharing this poll. Rebecca, I'll let you get started.
Thanks, Logan. Thank you everyone for participating in the poll. The results were almost exactly what I would have expected to see, which is that we are rapidly adopting AI search for a range of use cases, not everything, but a lot of them. And so I'm really excited to dive into that. The reality is, all of us are living through one of the most dramatic shifts in digital behavior since the rise of the mobile phone. It's a really interesting time to be in marketing. And if your brand visibility is not evolving to keep pace with the change that is happening, you risk becoming invisible, unfortunately, in a market that's rapidly changing. People are not just finding you on Google anymore. They're asking questions, full, nuanced, complex questions, to platforms like AI platforms like ChatGPT and Perplexity. And these systems are answering like instantly and with no links and no breadcrumbs back to your site. And that shift has massive implications for how your brand gets discovered. But maybe let's take a step back. So if you've been in marketing long enough, you remember when we searched on Yahoo. It was sort of an index search, and it was better than flipping through the encyclopedia or the yellow pages, but it wasn't great. And then Google came along and it introduced this beautiful white box that allowed you to enter any keyword you wanted and get these magical links that would take you to information across the web. And as a brand in the Google era, you could gain influence by optimizing for those keywords. Or if you couldn't, you could pay for ads that would show up in the sidebar. And we as marketing teams build entire functions around playing by Google's rules. And for the most part, if you played the rules well, you won. But all of that is changing very, very quickly with the introduction of AI search. Consumers, including a large percentage of us, are going to ChatGPT and Perplexity to search for information. And this shift is having a direct impact on Google search volume. And let's be clear, overall search volume in the world is not declining. In fact, it's rapidly expanding. It's just shifting to other places. Consumers aren't relying on Google as their single source of truth anymore. They're discovering brands across a whole range, a growing ecosystem of platforms, including social apps like TikTok or Instagram, and AI search interfaces. And the shift isn't theoretical. It's already happening. In fact, ChatGPT hit 180 million users in a year. And those users are not just playing around with novelty prompts or, like little discovery things. They're planning trips. In fact, I planned my most recent trip using ChatGPT. They're researching financial service, financial investment options, researching dentists, buying shoes, and they're doing all of this inside the AI experience. And the shift isn't just where people are searching, it's also how they're searching for that information. So here's kind of the shift in plain spoken terms. On Google, if I'm hungry, I might search for tacos near me. And if I am a restaurant that serves tacos, I can show up in the Google Map app and get found and chosen. On ChatGPT, that very same person might say, where are there some great Mexican restaurants in Fort Lauderdale that have vegan tacos? And I could even append that with a follow-up conversation like, do they have happy hour? What do people have to say about this place? And that is a very different kind of question. And ChatGPT provides a very different kind of answer. Unlike Google, it's not giving you a list of links where you can go explore and choose. It's actually giving you an answer. And that answer is stitched together from multiple sources. And if you, as a brand, are not in that stitched together answer, you're out of the conversation. And this is a really fundamental change in how discovery works. Now, to show up in these AI-generated answers, you need to optimize for more than keywords. What you need is data about your brand that is complete, accurate, structured, and semantically rich. AI needs to understand more than your location. It needs to understand everything that you offer, as well as your location, when you're open, how people describe you, and what sets you apart. And it needs all of that context instantly because it's deciding in real time what to say and how to answer that user's question. So the key is you're not optimizing just for search engines anymore. You are training a machine. You're optimizing for a machine or a robot to remember you. And unfortunately for a lot of us, AI search feels like a black box. We don't get visibility into where it's pulling the information up or how it's deciding how to talk about your brand. There's no business profile where you can go in and manage all of the information about your brand. There's no analytics dashboard where you can log in and see all of the searches where people were looking for you or where you showed up. And there is certainly no playbook for how you can go out and optimize to be visible on these platforms. At the end of the day, the three questions that marketers always want to know are, how am I performing? Where can I improve? And what do I need to do next? And this is the serious angst that many of us marketers are feeling today. We're flying blind in this ecosystem that we don't fully understand and we don't fully control it. And that's exactly why Yext built Scout. Scout is a brand visibility agent that is built for the era of AI search. What it does is it goes out and it collects and analyzes the deepest, most trusted data in your category, location by location, and turns it into prioritized actions that you can apply to help you be more visible, stand out, and win in both traditional and AI search. And the key here is that it doesn't just tell you how you're performing, it actually gives you recommendations to improve. So let's dive in a little bit more into what that means. So at the highest level, Scout is your visibility footprint. So it gives you clarity into three areas that matter. First, we're going to help you see how your brand is ranking across traditional search like Google and primary AI search platforms. And we're going to give you that visibility across every single location you have. Then we're going to help you understand what that data means. We're going to give you insights into where your competitors are outperforming you, what might be holding you back. And that goes down into, 200 plus different metrics around everything from missing data schema on your local pages to negative reviews that you haven't responded to for specific locations. All of those things can have a big impact on how you show up. And finally, we're going to help you optimize your online visibility by giving you real recommendations that you can act on. So you can, stop guessing and start making progress. So here's how it works for those of you who are curious. Our data and insights team at Yext has spent a lot of time studying how AI search engines make decisions, what data they trust, what information they ignore, what they penalized, and we have reverse engineered that logic into Scout's core engine. So the first thing we do is a scan. We simulate real-world queries across platforms like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and we capture data about how AI is answering those questions. And that helps us extrapolate your brand visibility, your rankings, the citations that AI is using to answer those questions, because you can ask it, it can give you an answer, and then you can say, why did you answer that way? What were your data sources? We can get that information back. And we can also understand your sentiment across hundreds and hundreds of locations. The next thing we do is we analyze that information. And we found that AI search prioritizes businesses that have consistent, relevant, frequently updated information and a strong reputation across multiple platforms. So we're looking really in 5 key areas. Relevance. Is your data aligned with what people are actually searching for? Proximity. Are you ranking where it actually matters, which would be the markets that you have a presence in? What is your reputation? Are your reviews and your ratings helping you, or are they hurting you? Engagement. Are you engaging with customers across social and reviews? And in response, are customers clicking, calling, bouncing? Like what's happening? And then finally, consistency. Is your information complete and accurate and identical across all of these different sites? After we have scanned your information and analyzed it, we're going to help you take action. We're going to give you clear next steps at the brand level and at the hyperlocation level so you can win more visibility in more places. And so this is why brands win with Scout. We help you see how your brand is performing across traditional and AI search. And then, of course, we take that data and we help you understand what it means, starting at the hyper-local level. Multi-location brands don't compete at the national level. You compete at the sidewalk level. And what works in Miami might fail in Minneapolis. And if you're only looking at the national average, what happens is it hides local weaknesses. So what Scout does is it shows you how you stack up in every single market against your 40 closest competitors in that market. We also then give you trusted data and transparency into our methodology for how that data was pulled. Every insight in Scout is grounded in verifiable hyperlocal data, so it's not black box guessing. You can see exactly what Scout sees and understand where we pulled our recommendations from. And of course, speaking of those recommendations, we're going to give you ways to optimize your brand visibility. So the first is that we're not just flagging where there are issues. We're going to give you recommendations for what to do next. And these are location-specific recommendations that you can act on fast. And my favorite part of all of this is that because it's part of the overall Yext platform, your execution is already built in. Every recommendation to ensure all of your data is consistent and up to date across your listings. Every recommendation to ensure that you are soliciting and responding to online reviews and having hyper-local pages so people can learn more about your brand and services. All of that is fully executable within the Yext platform. And the way that we execute is optimized for AI search engines. So the data schema is there, the consistency of the information is there, so that it's a virtuous cycle. You optimize and execute in a way that AI platforms reward. And so all of this just comes together in a lovely full circle way. It helps ensure that you and your brands show up in the moments that matter on platforms where people are searching for you. That's exactly what Scout delivers. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Trent, who is exceptional at walking us through a demo of exactly how Scout works.
Amazing. Thank you, Rebecca. Well, hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm going to share my screen here. As I'm doing so, I'm just a quick introduction. I'm Trent Ruffalo. I'm on the product marketing team here at Yext. And as my screen loads, hopefully everyone is seeing this okay. There's a thumbs up I can get, but What I'm going to do here is walk through Scout, and I'm super excited to have the opportunity to do this. And I'm going to share a lot more detail and show you how Scout works and a lot of what Rebecca has just presented here and set up. So very excited to walk through and share the Scout interface. So I think you guys can all see my screen here at this moment, but what we're looking at is essentially the home screen of Scout. In this representation of a brand here, we have a business that has roughly 1,000 locations. So we have 990 locations here scattered across the northeast of the US. And so right off the bat here, what we're getting is a global bird's eye view of our visibility and how we're performing. And what I want to call out a few things here very quickly are these sort of metrics that we're analyzing and representing in this very interactive map view of your brand. So first and foremost is Google. So I know Rebecca talked a lot about AI, the adoption and how consumers are searching and using these platforms more often. We've even seen that within the poll, and I've been monitoring some of the chat here with people responding and how they use different AI platforms more often. And so what we're seeing is that consumer journey is definitely changing quite a bit here, and it's happening very quickly. But Google isn't going anywhere. Google is still the primary driver of your direct traffic. So we don't want to ignore that. But what's great with Scout is you're now able to get that full visibility of not just how you're doing on Google, but also on these AI platforms that Rebecca had mentioned as well. So places like Perplexity, Gemini, as well as OpenAI, and ChatGPT. So it's great that we now have this one sort of consolidated view to be able to see and analyze how we're performing, not just on Google, but also on AI as well. So what I'm going to do is actually just call out a few things here because we're looking at right now a very rolled up view of all of our locations. We're getting the average of how our brand is performing here. So this brand is actually doing very, very well in this case. So on average, we're seeing that this locations are ranking second on Google for the primary category that they're associated with. That's the essence of how we're actually gathering this information for Google specifically. We will have the option to add more different types of keywords in the future, but for right now, how we're searching for these visibility scores is taking the primary category that's associated with your listings on Google and running those searches at the very hyperlocal level. So for all 990 of these locations, if this is a financial services organization and they're a bank, so to give you the real world example is we would be searching on the back end within Yext for bank near, wherever you have a location in all these different areas. And that's what we're showing is exactly where that location shows up in comparison to all of your competitors within that map pack. So again, from a global perspective, we're doing very, very well. And that's very important because your primary category makes up the abundance of where you're capturing traffic. So we want to make sure that we're starting there and have a good footprint for performance. We also have these AI visibility metrics. So we're not just scanning on Google, we're also pulling in visibility metrics across how you're ranking on these AI platforms, your AI visibility scores. So when we're running these searches on ChatGPT and all the others, how often is your brand showing up versus your competitors? That's what the visibility score will capture, as well as the brand sentiment here. So when ChatGPT is mentioning your brand or Perplexity is bringing your brand up in conversations or generating those responses, what's the sentiment attached to it? Is it positive? Is it negative? Or is it neutral? So as you can see here in this very interactive map view, which I'm going to start to play around with and toggle around, here we're defaulted to Google. We can see the performance represented by colors. So Google is kind of the primary default that we have here. We're ranked really well across the board, which is why we see a lot of green. If we were to toggle down here and filter to any of these visibility metrics, for example, so if I were to click this AI search visibility toggle, we'll notice here dynamically that this app will update to represent the performance of the metrics that we see here on the left-hand side. So you can toggle around and play around with this and get better insights into all of those different types of metrics that you care about. So as I play around with this here, we're able to understand at a bird's eye view how we're doing. But the real power of Scout is to better focus and understand what are the areas of opportunity. Are there some locations that are performing better than others? Those underperforming locations are probably the ones that we would want to hone in on and focus on who are we losing to, but more importantly is why. And so I'm going to just focus on the Florida area for the purpose of this sort of presentation. I'm a little bit biased because I am currently based in South Florida. I saw in the chat that we had some other people also in the Florida area, so love to see that. But what you can see here is that I'm starting to interact and actually drill into specific regions and specific areas. And as I do that, you'll notice that dynamically we'll start to drill in and see more data with performance representation. So as I'm starting to hone in a little bit more on Florida, yes, across the board we have very good performance here, but we can see here by this sort of red hexagon that there seems to be some areas of underperformance or areas of opportunity that maybe as marketers we can focus on and just better understand, why is this location maybe underperforming for whatever reason. So I'm going to drill into this specific location here. I can keep going further, or I can quickly just click on this little hexagon here. And now instead of looking at a more global mapped out view of all of our locations, we're filtered just to one location that seems to not be performing as well. We'll have here the metrics that will dynamically update. So instead of our broad representation of ranking second, this location is now ranked 18th on Google. And you can see the visibility metrics within AI update as well. So as a marketer, I want to understand, why is this location maybe not doing as well? Well, now I'm going to hop into what's this visibility report here up at the top right corner. I have this preloaded here. But what we're capturing here is, again, the hero metrics at the top is pretty similar to the view that you would see within the map view that we were just looking at. Before drilling into maybe some of the performance benchmark metrics and understanding who we're losing to and why, I want to call out a few things specifically with how we're capturing these AI visibility metrics, because it is a question that I do get quite frequently. People that ask, how are you specifically getting these metrics here? What specifically are you doing to researches to capture what the AI visibility score is, what our AI rank is, as well as our AI brand sentiment? So I do want to just focus on that really quickly, because Rebecca, I think, called out something that's very, very important. When people are searching on Google, they're searching for things like keywords and they're getting a map back, or they're getting a list of results. But on AI, it's very different. You get a response that's generated in real time, and you don't necessarily get a list of businesses in a ranking order, and you definitely don't get a map pack at the moment. So what we're actually doing to get the hyper-local insights to understand what is your AI visibility score, what is your rank on ChatGPT, and how is ChatGPT talking about your brand? Well, there's a little bit of prompt engineering on the back end that we're doing to be able to give you the hyper-local insights. So within this sort of tooltip here, it'll help me kind of visually explain exactly how we're running these searches. So yes, we'll start off with kind of the primary category and prompt AI to give us these results, but there's a little bit more that we're then engaging with each platform to get these specific metrics. So what we'll actually do as well, if it's ChatGPT, for example, we'll actually ask ChatGPT, how are people searching for a bank in Sanford, Florida, or generally within this area? And then ChatGPT is going to give us back a list of prompts that consumers are actually doing in that specific area and how they're searching. And so what we're doing at Yext is we're actually taking 4 of those questions and we're re-asking those back into ChatGPT. So those are combinations of branded and unbranded queries, as well as objective and subjective. So we're re-asking those questions back into ChatGPT. And then from there, we're able to capture a lot of these really important metrics, such as how you're ranking on ChatGPT and Perplexity and all those others, your visibility score. So how often is your brand showing up versus your competitors, and that brand sentiment, like I mentioned before. But there's a lot more behind the scenes that we're able to do in order to get these hyper-local metrics. And so there's multiple AI platforms that we're scanning on, but if you wanted to get specifically a little bit more granular to see the breakdown of how that visibility score and all these metrics break down, you can click that See Details button and get a breakdown of what the visibility score looks like on Gemini versus Grok and ChatGPT, et cetera. So wanted to call that out really quickly, but the purpose of honing into this visibility report is to better understand as a marketer, who am I losing to? But more importantly, why? So within this competitive benchmarking table here, I just scrolled down to the bottom of this visibility report. And as Rebecca mentioned, there's hundreds of different data points that we are analyzing that ultimately impact the algorithm's performance to rank businesses. Well, just quickly to show you what I was talking about with being able to drill into kind of the breakdown of how you're performing across different platforms. You can click on the see details section of each tab here within the AI search performance. And then what I was referring to before, kind of this tooltip icon that will break down kind of that method and philosophy for how we're capturing these engagement metrics. So what I'll do here is go down to the bottom of this visibility report. We have this massive competitive benchmarking table, and these are all metrics that Rebecca had mentioned that essentially make up where and how brands rank in search. So these are all things that span across your listings, your reviews, your social presence, as well as how your websites are performing. So all the 4 core components that make up a brand's digital presence and impacting rank and engagement. We have a very robust list of data points, and these are all things that heavily contribute to where and how brands rank in search. So what we're able to do as a marketer is specifically hone in on this specific location. One, we can automatically identify who are we competing against, and in this case, who are we losing to? So Scout will automatically identify who your top 40 competitors are. So if you wanted to scroll through the entire list, of course you could. I think most brands tend to focus on the more immediate ones that are ranking much higher. So those in the top 3, top 5, top 10, but obviously that's relative to where this location is performing. So at the moment, this location is ranked 18th on Google, and it looks like we're losing out to brands like Trustco, Truist, and Chase. And what we're able to do is actually pinpoint specifically what are these brands doing that this location is lacking in this case. So right off the bat, just by manually looking at this data, we can very quickly indicate different areas of opportunity that are highlighted in these red colored boxes based on what our competitors are doing. So because we only have 7 reviews for this location, we can see that every single competitor that is beating us in this specific area has a lot more reviews. There's literally pretty much tripled from what we have. Automatically, area of opportunity, we should be able to improve the review count for this specific location. And one thing I do also want to call out is that at the moment, all these metrics that you see on the left-hand side are stack ranked. So Rebecca mentioned a lot of what our data science team is analyzing and looking at behind the scenes is understanding what are the most important metrics that impact performance. And so that's why we have those stack ranked from highest impact to lowest impact. That's something that our teams are constantly monitoring and keeping a pulse on. So as of right now, these are what we've identified as the highest impact metrics. So we can look at this, for example, on a more manual level and say, it definitely looks like our photo count and review count are things that we could probably focus on to quickly improve, how this location compares to what our competitors are doing across the board. But as a person, you probably, yes, you could go through and analyze this on your own. And if you love getting into the weeds of data, there's a plethora that you can analyze and sift through here. But really the beauty of Scout is not having to do that and having Scout sort of identify this data for you and provide insights and recommendations of what you should do next. So kind of that third question of what Rebecca was talking about with AI being a black box. It's like, how am I performing? Where can I improve? And what do I need to do next? Well, with Scout, we've already identified where can we improve. It's this specific location that is significantly underperforming. Now, what do we do to fix that? How do we improve the performance and help boost up this location's performance, not just on Google, but across AI as well? So manually, you notice that we called out the review count being significantly under the benchmark with our competitors. Well, you'll notice here that Scout has automatically identified that as being a high impact recommendation and insight that you can take action on. And I'm actually going to stop sharing for a quick second to click into that specific insight and show you what it looks like. I don't know if that was the right one, but bear with me for a second here. We're just going to click into it. That. Cool. So I think we're all still looking at the same screen here. But as I click into view this insight, you'll notice that we have the action called out, what we're actually trying to improve, which is increasing the review count on Google, the actions that we can take. So if we don't have any sort of solicitation method strategy, we can set up a weekly goal of acquiring new reviews. If we already are doing something to capture more feedback, how can we automate that process to make it more seamless and improve the review count? Or we can leverage different teams if there's more people involved, depending on your team's processes. And then ultimately, we want to tie this back to why this matters. So I mentioned before that a lot of our data science team is analyzing and quantifying the impact of taking these types of actions. So a lot of the data that you see backed up into why this matters is all backed by our data science team and analyzing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of different data points, and sort of benchmarking exactly what, all the brands that we work with and the hundreds of thousands of locations that we were helping manage today, and really correlating kind of the impact of what you can, what taking this type of action can do to result in performance improvements. So now what I'm going to do is go back to our, see, this is the problem of not using the same tab, but what I'm going to do here very quickly is actually go back to our map view to kind of look at how we could take action at this level. On a more scalable, with a more scalable method in place. Okay, so I think we're still looking at our map view here. What I'm going to do is actually drill back out and show you how you could maybe pinpoint areas of opportunity, also not just at the very single location level, but maybe identifying areas of opportunity that you could quickly take action on across multiple locations. So as I'm scanning back out, what I can do, for example, is maybe specifically pinpoint a specific area, such as Florida, or for example, if I want to just go back to my global view, what I can do is I can run that same visibility report. So instead of just filtering for one location, I'm going to go back to our global view here where we have all 990 locations being captured at a bird's eye level. And I'm going to jump into a visibility report, and we're going to come back down to that same competitive benchmarking table at the bottom here. And what we'll see is the table will look very similar, but one, you'll notice that the competitors will not be identified, and that's simply because we're looking at this for 990 locations, and the competitors that you're competing with at the local level are all going to vary, but it will show you on average kind of how your business is performing across the different competitive landscape. But specifically here, what we're able to do is identify the number of locations that you have maybe performing below and above the benchmark for a lot of these high impact metrics. So for example, for Google photo count and Google review count, which are some of the ones towards the top, we have identified 327 locations that have reviews below the benchmark, and then same thing with photo count. We have 619. So from here, we can click and download this data to understand which of those 327 locations are below the benchmark. And from there, as a marketer, I can go and take that information, act on all of those locations or a subset of them. And just that way I have the visibility into understanding, okay, here's the locations that need to improve their photo count. Let's put in a plan in place to actually fix that. And so you can kind of think of how this methodology would work across all these different metrics here. And then of course, as Rebecca mentioned, Scout sort of sits on top of the entire Yext platform. So every recommendation that you're being offered are all things that you can act on directly in Yext. So whether those are things like fixing your listings visibility or improving your reputation, things with your web presence, or even different social metrics, those are all things that sit on top of the Yext platform, and all actions that you can implement directly within Yext. So you're not required or needing to go to different tools or use different systems. You kind of have one place to understand your visibility and then take action directly. Now, one last thing here that I'll talk about before passing it over for some Q&A here, because I know we've probably gathered a lot of questions, are some use cases of how to actually leverage the data and insights of Scout that don't necessarily need to be acted on within Yext itself, or making improvements that way. And so some of the things that I've heard pretty frequently as high value sort of inputs from a lot of the brands that we've spoken with already is actually taking the data from Scout and influencing our paid media strategy. So for example, we can very quickly identify all of our really great performing locations that are doing well organically versus those that are maybe not. So we can reallocate our paid spend from our very well performing locations and maybe reallocate that to those that are not performing as well organically. And also what we can do is do what's called competitor keyword bidding. So if there's a location like what we were just looking at before that is ranked 18th, they're not doing as well. Well, we could maybe go to that competitive benchmarking table and we can identify who our top competitors are. And if we want to target their branded key terms, we can use Scout to influence that decision that way as well. So a couple of use cases that we've heard brands get really excited about with leveraging the data and insights that you're gathering from Scout that don't necessarily need to be tied directly back to Yext. Question that was, if I have specific competitors I want to compare against, can I add them manually? That's a great question, whoever pre-submitted that. So at the moment, the Scout only supports the ability to automatically identify your competitors at the local level. The ability to add specific competitors is definitely something that we've heard as feedback and something that we look to incorporate in the near future, definitely. But at the moment, it's just what Scout identifies for you as your top 40 competitors at the very local level. Looks like we had another question that came in around how are we defining AI rank? Are we pulling that in? How are we pulling that information? Also a great question. So I think we also mentioned a little bit earlier that AI doesn't necessarily always provide a list of businesses. So in the instances that we don't, after all that interaction and engagement that I mentioned we're doing with ChatGPT and Perplexity on the back end, we'll actually then ask a follow-up question to provide us a list of top 10 businesses. So we'll actually sort of prompt the AI to give us that rank, where they don't always do that. But in these scenarios where they don't, we will specifically ask for that back to get that AI rank metric. Okay, so it looks like we have another question here that came in around how does Scout normalize results for density of locations, assuming a brand with 30 locations will perform better than a brand with 10 locations. How does density of locations help or hinder any individual location results? Great question. So what Scout is doing is trying to basically take out and understand the most important metrics and factors that contribute to a brand's performance. So what we're doing is trying to take proximity out of the equation as much as possible, in addition to the fact that performance is going to vary based on region, based on industry. And so those are all things that Scout is sort of taking into consideration. And because of the data set that we have and understanding like what are the specific things that impact certain areas or certain industries, it can make much better or higher quality types of recommendations just based on the data set that it's able to analyze.
All right, we're going to pass it over to Hannah so she can share her screen on some of the different metrics that we want to show you in Scout 2. Hannah, I think that if you just share your screen now, you should be able to show everyone what we're talking about.
Okay, so as you can see, this is really similar to the single location that Trent shared, but you can see that now I'm looking at a bunch of locations that I filtered to, and you get the same structure of being able to see the rolled up scores for Google Rank and also the AI performance metrics across all of the locations in the set. And then you also get to see the insights. And so the insights here are going to get more tailored as we build Scout out further. But essentially, these are going to be the top recommendations and insights for that set of locations versus the screen that Trent demoed earlier, which is the top insights and recommendations for a single location. As we go down here, this is an area where we're also working on improving and adding more data in and figuring out how to layer on competitive data in an interesting way. But you can then see these are the rolled up performance metrics across locations. So a big difference here between the single location view and this view is that you can see out of this set of 990 locations, how many of them are above their hyperlocal benchmark and how many are below their hyperlocal benchmark. So you can see here in this set for Google review count, the vast majority, 704 of them are above their hyperlocal benchmarks versus 286 of them are below. So then you can download the data for these locations. We're working on making it way easier for you to get to that list of locations and figure out how to take action. Another thing I want to point out is that in this single location view, we were able to call out the specific competitors here because for a single location, it's very clear who is coming up in that first position, second position, and third position, and so on and so forth. But in the multi-location view, there's a lot of scans, a lot of searches that we've been running. So the competitor data is aggregated here, but that's an area where we're working with UX to figure out how to best display more specific competitor data.
Rebecca, we just got one really good question that I want to find, that I want to pull from Emily. I'm trying to find where she said it, but we have a really small marketing team. Where should we focus first? Reviews, website, content, etc. We're going through all of our Google and business profiles and updating them this month. So where should they focus first?
That is such a great question. So what's interesting is that Scout will give you hyper local insights because the answer probably varies by location that you have. So for example, one location might tell you that you've got lower review volume than the competition. And so that would be an area to focus. And so I would recommend looking at it at that level. But a good rule of thumb from what we're seeing is that AI is really dialed into your sentiment, and it's looking at your Google review volume and if you're responding to those. So if there's one thing that you could do, I would really focus on that. And then as far as local pages are concerned, those tend to be coming up a lot as well. So I would focus first on your reputation and then on your website content.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Rebecca. I think the next question, Hannah, it will be sent over for you. I'm trying to find this one. Here we go. This is from Elizabeth. She asked a great question. How does Scout take into account how personalized the AI responses are per user?
Yeah, great question. So as Elizabeth is mentioning here, when you're, chatting away with ChatGPT, it remembers the history of what you've been asking it. And you can imagine how for each user that's individually working with these LLMs, the history and the context can be quite different. So the way that we are running the scans for AI is we're not over-indexing on what each of these different histories are going to be, but instead providing a baseline for, hey, how on average is the LLM going to be responding across all these different users with their various contexts and various histories. A great example of this is our AI rank metric and our AI rank question. What we are doing is saying, hey, for this category of business, how do you as ChatGPT or you as Gemini take into account and how do you rank these businesses agnostic of all of this context that may be provided? And that gives us a really good baseline to understand how are you doing before jumping into, okay, now let's think about are there particular types of users or groups of users that you want to be performing better for? So that's not something we've tackled yet, but right now we're really focused on that baseline.
Awesome. This next question, I think, goes back to you again, Hannah, so you're going to get all the questions today. But
okay.
A lot of the recommendations in that visibility report say to use AI-friendly keywords within reviews, responses, etc., but it does not include what it is exactly. Will that be added to the Scout platform at any time?
Yes, another great question, and definitely speaks to where we're going and the roadmap here. Yes, we intend to include stuff like that. This is something that we're hard at work researching on the research side with the data science team to understand like what performance will look like and what we can recommend that we think will yield good results. So keep your eyes peeled. This is something we're looking at.
Awesome. Another one that's coming for you, I think, as well. Good Scout questions, which is good. But this is from Liz. Knowing that AI is conversational, we know that queries are significantly longer. How confident do you feel about the AI rank within category level terms?
Yes, this actually is really relevant to the question 2 questions ago around how do we take in context. Kind of similar question in many ways, where the reason we are using the category level terms, I would say actually for AI rank and for the AI stuff, we're using the category term as the building block to ask questions. So when we're engaging with and running the scans on the AI side, we are asking questions. But like you said, there's going to be significantly longer queries. Every individual is going to ask in a slightly different way. You might throw in some extra details in there, depending on what you're thinking of or looking at. And so we've really been thinking about this in the context of topics, and your primary topic is going to be your category level in this instance. So what we're really looking at right now is providing that baseline for that primary category and that primary topic that you're interested in. Something that we have heard from a lot of customers is wanting to track your performance for other topics, not just the primary category. And that's something that we're looking at understanding. And like a really great way that we've been looking at this with the data science team is what is like at what point are we capturing the right amount of signal, and at what point is it we're just looking at the long tail. So we look for something called the knee point, where it's if we are tracking one topic and we add another topic, we might be capturing a lot more signal. And then if we add a third topic, we might be capturing even more signal. But as you go, we're capturing progressively less and less signal. So where's the best bang for your buck here of how would we advise you to spend your money with us, with Scout, and get the right signal for how you're performing?
Awesome. I promised Emily I would get to this question. So Hannah, I'm going to give you another one before I get Rebecca to answer a few. But what does the AI visibility report take into consideration? Trent talked about it a little bit, but she wants some more detail on what queries are or aren't resulting in visibility, et cetera.
Yes, that's a great question. So I will say, I'll open with definitely watch this space. We're continually studying how to best represent AI visibility. As we all know, this is a really quickly moving industry. So as the industry evolves, we are also adjusting and trying to change how we think about visibility here. Right now, we take that core topic, which right now is the primary category, and we ask a bunch of unbranded questions. And we try to vary those unbranded questions to be hitting like a good, again, focused on that baseline for now. Looking at the results that come back from that list of unbranded questions we're asking, we then look at how many times you are showing up and how many times other competitors are showing up. So then we take the number of times any brand is mentioned and the number of times you are mentioned, and that's how we arrive at the AI visibility score. Other nuances that are taken into consideration is, like, for example, for one of the questions, if you are the only brand that is mentioned, that is, of higher weight. That's something that's great because, someone asked that question and you're the only brand that got answered. There's no competition there. Versus if you are one of 5 brands mentioned or one of 20 brands mentioned, that also goes into consideration here.
Awesome. Rebecca, I'm going to pass this next one over to you. This is a holistical AI question. And I know that that's not necessarily exactly what we're talking about today, but it is in the same vein. Where do you even start your AI journey in marketing? While AI is a hot topic, for enablement is very slow in most companies. Are there any tips and tricks on how that can be done better, specifically when we are thinking about how Scout can help them?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things here. I think a lot of marketing teams tend to naturally gravitate towards using AI for content generation, right? To improve efficiency and those sorts of things. And that is certainly something worth exploring. I've been using it a lot to get feedback. So I'll ask ChatGPT to assess a campaign I've created or a proposal I've got out there, and assess this from the point of view of my customers. And it's unlocked a lot of efficiencies just for improving communications. And so I think in terms of marketing teams just adopting AI, identify pain points where there's friction, where there are things that are taking your team a lot of time, to see if there's a way that AI can help streamline. And when you get some nice low risk wins, it kind of helps introduce you to some other things. I just did a Forbes article about it, and so we can also share that out too for a couple of tips that we found inside Yext and how we've been using AI. I'd be happy to share that.
Awesome. Here's another one that I'm seeing for you, Hannah. I'm going to pull this up real quick, but this is from Liz. How many questions did we say that we're using for that visibility report? Visibility score. Wow, I can't talk either.
Yes, you're correct. Right now, we're using 4 questions for the visibility score. I wouldn't over-index on that, though, because as I mentioned, this is an area where we're continually honing, studying, improving. So that number will likely fluctuate in the coming months, year, et cetera.
Then a question from Charles about these AI visibility tests. How often are these being ran? What's the frequency? Multiple times a day, once per day, less? Can they be manipulated by the users? What does that report look like?
Yeah, great question. So for the Scout product as a customer, we will run a scan once per month. So you get that refresh data once per month. But on the testing side and on the I guess data science side, what we are doing, we are running a lot more tests behind the scenes at a higher frequency. And what we're looking to understand is that monthly cadence the right cadence, for example? And so far, one of the reasons we have this monthly cadence going right now is because one thing we're finding is, it's not necessarily we haven't proved out that it's more helpful to run that data more frequently yet, especially as the main goal for marketers like yourselves with these reports will be to analyze the report, understand what actions you want to take those actions, and then see the results of those actions. And those things take time. And a lot of these actions, then there are the performance metrics themselves are lagging indicators. So until we prove out that it is helpful to have that data more frequently, it might actually just provide more noise and be harder to wade through and find the signal.
Yeah, great point. Good question here from Marcel. It's a pretty long one, but how does Scout normalize results for density of locations? Assuming a brand with 30 locations in a DMA will perform better than a brand with 10 locations in the same DMA, how does density of locations help or hinder any individual location results?
Great question. So as you probably noticed in the demo, our main focus in Scout at this stage is hyperlocal location performance. So when we are running the scans, we do them on a per location basis. And from the perspective of that location, the other, let's take any of these cases. So in the brand with 30 locations in a DMA, each individual location, they're going to have a set of competitors. And in that instance, some of those competitors are going to be other locations from their same brand. That same thing is going to apply for the brand with 10 locations in the same DMA. So really what it is, if you just have a lot of high density locations of your own locations, it just increases the likelihood that one of your own locations might end up being competitive with you might start seeing that in the results. As you roll out, as you zoom out on the map, as you look at a wide, especially on the map view, we have the ability for you to toggle between 2 different views, depending on which user you are. At the brand level, if you just want to answer the question, how likely is it for anybody to see any of my locations? We have a setting that we can follow up with all the documentation for, where you can see that kind of brand coverage, where that 30 location account is likely to perform better. We also have another view, which is saying, okay, I want to see the individual performance of all my locations. That's good for someone who's just trying, like maybe you are a franchisee that owns a bunch of franchises and you want to see how each of your franchises are doing, and you don't want to be you don't want to obscure any one location's bad performance with a different location's good performance. That's another view that you can look at on the map as well.